Why was she the only one who didn't flinch when the gunfire echoed across the range? Sarah Martinez had asked herself that question 100 times growing up in her small Texas town. Other girls shrieked when firecrackers went off, covered their ears when rifles cracked during hunting season. But not Sarah. For her, the sound of gunfire wasn't noise. It was order, a rhythm that cut through the confusion of the world and gave her a sense of calm no one else seemed to understand. Her father noticed it first. A retired Marine, he carried the kind of silence only combat veterans hold in their bones. He didn't smile much, didn't waste words. But when he saw how steady Sarah's hands were on the rifle he'd once used to train young recruits, he said something that lodged in her chest like a secret promise. "You see the world different, kid. That matters." On weekends, while her classmates filled malls and posted pictures of their outfits on social media, Sarah lay in the dirt beside her father at the range, learning wind, breathing, patience. She didn't care that her jeans were stained with grass or that her hair smelled of gun oil. Each shot was a conversation between her, the rifle, and the target. When the bullet struck where she intended, it was like hearing a truth answered back. Still, when she turned 18 and walked into the Army recruitment office, no one expected the words she spoke. The recruiter, Sergeant Williams, glanced up, half bored, already assuming she wanted to ask about medical programs or desk jobs. But Sarah sat down, tied her dark hair into a ponytail and leaned forward. "I want to be a sniper." 5 words firm, unshaken. The sergeant studied her. He'd heard wild declarations before. He'd seen cocky boys talk themselves up, only to crumble on the first day of basic. But Sarah's eyes didn't hold bravado. They held something harder to argue with resolve. The path she was asking for wasn't just steep. It was nearly impossible. Few women had ever been permitted into sniper school, fewer still had survived its demands. The failure rate was crushing, even for men who had fought through deployments. But Sarah didn't look away when the sergeant warned her. She just listened, nodded once, and said, "I know what I'm asking." Basic training came next. Sweat, mud, endless repetition. Drill instructors circled like vultures, pushing her harder than anyone else. They wanted to break her, wanted to prove that women couldn't outlast men in combat roles. The comments were sharp, sometimes cruel. And yet every morning she laced her boots and ran farther than before. Every obstacle course, every rucksack march, she carried the weight of their doubt like a second pack and still finished at the front. Her classmates, at first skeptical, couldn't deny results. During marksmanship training, Sarah's scores floated consistently near the top 5%. The rifle was an extension of her, but she knew that shooting straight wasn't enough. Snipers needed more than precision. They needed stillness, endurance, patience that could stretch for days. That patience was tested the day she first stepped onto the grounds of sniper school in Georgia. The place didn't look like much: squat concrete buildings, endless forests, hills rolling away like a natural gauntlet. But every inch of it was designed to test human limits. 32 candidates had been accepted. Only one was a woman, Sarah. When Master Sergeant walked in for the briefing, the room fell into silence. His reputation preceded him: 3 tours in Afghanistan, scars he didn't explain, eyes that saw through excuses before you could form them. He introduced the course not with encouragement but with a warning. 60% of you will fail, the rest will wish you had. Sarah didn't blink, but her stomach twisted. The first week hit with relentless fundamentals: camouflage, concealment, wind estimation, ballistics. Sarah excelled in the classroom. Numbers never intimidated her. She could break down formulas for bullet drop and humidity faster than some of the veterans beside her, but made it clear knowledge on paper was worthless if you couldn't execute it in the field. And that was where Sarah's first true test arrived. The stalk exercise. A mile-long crawl across open ground under the eyes of instructors with binoculars and scopes. At the end of that agonizing crawl, a single shot, one chance, at a target 600 yards away, all without being spotted. The night before, Sarah stayed awake patching every seam of her suit with burlap and twine, weaving in leaves and grass until she looked less like a person than a moving thicket. She painted her face carefully, no shine, no streaks. When dawn came humid and heavy, she told herself she was ready. The first few hundred yards went well. She hugged depressions in the earth, moved when the instructors' heads turned. Sweat blurred her, but she pushed on. Every inch forward was earned by her elbows and knees grinding into dirt. Then it happened. A whistle cut the air like a blade. "Candidate Martinez, you've been compromised. Exercise terminated." The words shattered her. She froze, heart punching her ribs. She had been spotted, exposed, failed. Standing up, bits of leaves and earth falling from her suit, she caught the look in his eyes. Not anger, not mockery, just cold disappointment. Somehow that hurt worse. The rest of the day blurred. Others celebrated their successes in low voices, but Sarah sat on her bunk, replaying every move she'd made. Where had she shifted wrong? Where had her confidence become carelessness? She had walked into sniper school thinking her natural ability would be enough, but natural ability hadn't saved her here. That night in the mess hall, slid into the seat across from her. His plate was empty, his eyes unreadable. "You're thinking too much," he said. Sarah stared at him. "I failed, I was careless, I got spotted." He shook his head. "No, you weren't careless. You were trying to prove something. There's a difference. Every candidate fails something. The question is what you do with it. Learn or let it bury you." The words landed heavier than any drill instructor's scream. For the first time, she wondered if her determination to prove herself, as a woman, as her father's daughter, as someone who belonged here, was blinding her to the very patience the role demanded. That night, lying awake in the dark barracks, Sarah faced a truth she had been avoiding. Maybe failure wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. But the question gnawed at her, louder than sleep could silence. Could she adapt before sniper school chewed her up and spat her out like so many before? What good was perfect aim if it came too late? That was the thought drilling into Sarah's mind as she lay prone at the range, her rifle steady, her calculations exact, yet her instructors shifting with impatience behind her. "Martinez, target," his voice cracked across the field. 800 yards, wind 6 miles per hour from northeast, temperature 72 degrees, humidity 60, 3-inch holdover, 2 left windage, she recited, breath slow, scope lined with precision. "Take the shot." She squeezed the trigger. The bullet hit dead center, flawless. "Perfect grouping," muttered, then louder. "But in combat, that target's already killed 2 of your teammates while you were doing math." The words stung sharper than recoil. Sarah's heart sank, her pride nodding into shame. It wasn't her aim that was failing. It was her instinct. She couldn't let go of control, couldn't trust what she already knew. And sniper school didn't wait for perfectionists. Each day bled into the next with new challenges. Range estimations under stress. Wind calls when gusts flipped directions. Long-distance shots where even the Earth's rotation mattered. Sarah's numbers were always right, but her timing wrong. She was too deliberate, too cautious, always hunting for the perfect equation while others trusted their training and fired fast. She could see it in his eyes, respect for her skill, disappointment in her hesitation. Then came the urban exercises, the chaos, the blur of civilians, hostels, windows, walls. Unlike the sterile stillness of the range, this was noise, movement, uncertainty. Her team had overwatch on a mock village. A squad moved below, clearing buildings. Sarah's role was simple: protect them, eliminate threats before they could strike. Through her scope she saw him, a hostile slipping into position with a rifle raised. Easy shot, but behind him, a woman, civilian role player, close enough that any miss could kill her. Sarah hesitated, calculated, recalculated. Her finger froze on the trigger. By the time she fired, the target had shifted. The shot was clean but late, too late. Instructors swarmed, ending the scenario. Didn't raise his voice in the debrief. That almost made it worse. Precision is important, he said, gaze heavy. But decisiveness saves lives. A good shot taken quickly is better than a perfect shot taken too late. Sarah sat silent, heat rising in her chest. She wanted to scream that she wasn't careless, that she only wanted to avoid mistakes. But deep down, she knew the truth. Her need for control, for perfection, was becoming its own weakness. That night, she called her father for the first time since arriving. "I'm failing," she admitted, voice low in the barracks phone booth. "I keep second-guessing. I can't make myself just pull the trigger." On the other end, silence. Then his voice, calm, weathered, carrying weight from years of knowing life and death decisions. "Sweetheart, you're trying to be perfect in a job where perfect doesn't exist. Sometimes the best choice is the one you make fast and commit to completely. Trust your training. Trust yourself. Stop trying to control everything." The words pressed into her ribs, hard but true. She hung up and sat in the dark for a long time, wondering if she was even capable of letting go. 3 weeks later, the night exercise arrived, a mission simulation. Sarah was paired with a quiet Californian who had proven sharp, reliable, unshaken. Their task: infiltrate a compound, gather intelligence, and eliminate a high-value target. Moving through the forest at night, Sarah's doubts clawed at her. Every step she overanalyzed. Was she too loud, too slow, was noticing? But as the hours passed, she forced herself to breathe, to trust his navigation, to do what she did best: observe. Watch the ground, notice details. By the time they reached the perimeter, something inside her had shifted. She wasn't calculating every risk. She was living it. They found a vantage point 400 yards out, spotted. Sarah set her rifle, calm, still. Then the target appeared, casual, too casual. Talking, briefcase in hand, bodyguards at his side. "Target acquired," whispered. "Wind minimal, range 410, take the shot." Sarah's finger brushed the trigger, but her gut twisted. Something was wrong. She scanned left, a glint in a window, a reflection, a sniper's scope. "Counter sniper, 2 o'clock, second floor." Adjusted. "You're right, he's got you pinned." If she had fired, she'd be dead. They both would. For the first time, Sarah didn't freeze. She didn't bury herself in calculations. She thought fast, clear. "We use it against him. I shoot the target, we move. He exposes himself, you take him." Risky, bold, hesitated, then nodded. "Let's do it." Sarah pulled the trigger, target down. No pause. She shifted, fast and silent, to their alternate position. Moments later, the counter-sniper fired into the spot they had abandoned. His mistake. Spotted, Sarah adjusted instinctively. Range 520. Wind minimal. She didn't double-check, didn't overthink. She trusted herself. She fired. The enemy sniper dropped. For 30 minutes they stayed, scanning for more threats. None came. Mission complete. Walking back through the forest, Sarah felt something she hadn't since arriving: certainty. She had trusted herself, acted without hesitation, and it had worked. At sunrise, debriefed them. "Most teams didn't even spot the counter-sniper," he said. "You not only saw him, you turned the trap against him. That's situational awareness. That's adaptability." His eyes landed on her. Not cold this time, not disappointed, but proud. And for the first time, Sarah believed it too. Why did the silence feel heavier now, almost louder than the gunfire had ever been? Sarah sat on the edge of her bunk, boots unlaced, listening to the quiet around her. The barracks were full of exhausted bodies. 32 had started, but now less than 20 remained. Some had quit. Some had been cut. A few had simply vanished overnight, their gear packed, their bunks empty by morning. Sniper school was ruthless that way. It didn't ask permission. It just swallowed the unprepared whole. But Sarah was still here. And after the night exercise, something had shifted inside her. For weeks she'd felt like an imposter, a mathematician trying to solve battles with numbers while others trusted instinct. But the counter-sniper mission had cracked that shell. She hadn't been paralyzed. She hadn't second-guessed. She had acted fast, precise, sure. Words at the debrief echoed in her chest like a steady drum. Situational awareness, adaptability. She rolled those words over and over in her mind. Maybe for the first time, she was becoming more than just a shooter. She was becoming a sniper. The days after blurred into a grueling escalation. Sleep deprivation drills, forced marches under full load, marksmanship tests run after 48 hours awake, hands trembling from exhaustion, rain drills that turned suits into mud-soaked weights, instructors shouting, whistles cutting, watching silently from a distance with eyes that missed nothing. It was designed to break them, to strip away every illusion of comfort, and Sarah felt the strain claw at her bones. But strangely, she no longer collapsed under it. Instead, she leaned into it. When she stumbled during a night navigation drill, reached out a hand. She refused it not out of pride, but because she wanted to prove to herself that she could get back up alone. When her rifle jammed in the mud, she didn't panic. She fixed it with calm fingers, even as her heart hammered in her throat. And when the instructors pushed, mocked, demanded faster times, she didn't hear cruelty anymore. She heard challenge, and in the challenge she found focus. Her classmates noticed. The same soldiers who once doubted her now gave nods of respect as they passed, started calling her steady hands under his breath, a nickname that stuck. And though the barracks were filled with rivalry and tension, Sarah felt something she hadn't before, belonging. It wasn't just her progress. It was the quiet bond forming among them all. They were competitors, yes, but also survivors together. When one faltered, another lifted. When one failed, the rest absorbed the weight. Still, the final evaluation loomed like a storm cloud. Hinted at it but gave no details, just warnings. This will test every skill you've learned, all at once. You'll wish you were back on the range. The night before the briefing, Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling. She thought of her father, thought of his words about perfection, how perfect didn't exist, only choices you lived with. She wondered if he was sleeping, if he was imagining her in some faraway barracks, still fighting to hold her place in a world that hadn't wanted her to enter in the first place. By dawn, the candidates were lined in the briefing room. Stood at the front, his arms crossed, his expression carved from stone. But behind the steel, Sarah thought she glimpsed something softer. Pride. 18 of you remain, he began. You've been tested on every skill in isolation. Now you'll be tested on all of them together. This is not training. This is your final exam. Pass and you graduate. Fail and you go back to your unit. The room was silent. The weight of his words pressed down on every chest. The mission was laid out, 24 hours in a simulated hostile urban environment. Teams of 2, multiple objectives, intelligence gathering, target elimination, extraction under pursuit, no direct contact with instructors. Once inserted, they were alone. Sarah was paired with James, a soldier from North Carolina. She hadn't worked closely with him before, but she knew his reputation. Reliable, sharp-eyed, calm under fire. She nodded when they were matched, and he returned the nod with quiet confidence. Together they spent hours in planning. Maps spread across the table, weather reports, patrol patterns, every detail studied, memorized, handled navigation and comms. Sarah was primary shooter. When the helicopter lifted them into the gray morning sky, Sarah's chest tightened. This was it. They were dropped 3 miles from the mock city, a place eerily alive with role players, vehicles, patrols. It wasn't a training ground. It was a stage, a theater designed to mirror war itself. They moved carefully, slow through the forest, every sound amplified by adrenaline. The city rose ahead like a waiting test. Sarah's heartbeat quickened, not with fear but anticipation. By mid-afternoon, they had eyes on the square where their target was scheduled to appear. set up security. Sarah studied through her scope. Patrols moved like clockwork. Civilians complicating every angle. It was real enough to make her skin crawl. As evening settled, the target emerged military dress, flanked by commanders striding through the square. Sarah's crosshairs locked. The shot was clean. Easy. "Target clear," whispered. But Sarah froze. Beside the target was a civilian too close. A miscalculation, a twitch, and the wrong person would fall. Her breath hitched. Old habits threatened to resurface. She almost overthought, almost let hesitation rule again. But then she remembered her father's voice. "Perfect doesn't exist. Commit to the choice you make." She waited, patient, watching. And then the moment came. The target shifted away, leaning over a table. Civilian out of the line. The shot opened. Sarah squeezed. Bullet flew. Target dropped clean, no collateral. For an instant, relief flooded her chest, but only for an instant, because already the square erupted in chaos, patrols shouting, boots pounding, search teams forming. "Move," hissed. They packed fast, shifting into shadow, slipping away into the city's veins. Every alley was a potential trap, every window a watching eye. Hours crawled. They moved building to building, always one step ahead of the hunt. Then, at midnight, they reached a checkpoint blocking their route. 4 guards, vehicles, communications gear. Impossible to sneak past. Cursed under his breath, "We'll never make it around in time." Sarah studied the scene. Her mind spun, not slow, not paralyzed, but alive. A plan formed, risky, precise. "The comms," she whispered. "I can take out their radio gear. You make a diversion. While they're confused, we slip through." Stared, then nodded. Sarah braced in a shadowed window. Range 150, small target. Her scope settled on the antenna. She breathed in, out, and fired. The antenna snapped, sparks, shouts, confusion. Tossed debris on the opposite side of the street, creating noise, scattering the guards. Together they moved silent, quick, threading through the chaos like smoke, past the checkpoint, into the night. Hours later, as dawn bled across the horizon, the helicopter appeared at the extraction zone. Sarah climbed aboard, lungs burning, body aching, heart pounding with something beyond exhaustion. Pride. For the first time, she didn't just feel like a shooter. She felt like a sniper. Why did the badge feel heavier than the rifle she carried? Sarah stood at attention, the sun pressing down on her shoulders, her uniform crisp, her body trembling beneath the surface. Around her were 17 other candidates, all that remained of the original 32. 18 names, 18 survivors. The graduation ceremony was simple. No theatrics, no grand speeches. Just Master Sergeant moving down the line, pinning sniper qualification badges onto each chest with the weight of quiet authority. When he reached Sarah, he paused. His weathered hands held the small metal pin as if it carried something more than steel. He fixed it onto her uniform, then leaned closer, his words meant only for her. "You came here as a shooter. You're leaving as a sniper. The difference matters. Don't forget it." She swallowed hard, fighting the sting in her eyes. His approval was worth more than any certificate. In the crowd stood her parents. Her father, the retired Marine who had placed a rifle in her hands when she was a child, had tears in his eyes. Her mother, who had worried endlessly, stood than Sarah had ever seen, her pride and fear tangled in equal measure. That night, as graduates celebrated quietly with their new brothers and sisters in arms, Sarah sat alone for a moment, tracing the edges of the badge with her thumb. She thought of the first day, the failure of her stalking exercise, the shame, the doubt. And she thought of the moment she pulled the trigger under fire, choosing instinct, choosing trust. It wasn't about the badge. It was about what she had become. 3 months later, Sarah found herself in Afghanistan. The air was dry, thin, cutting into her lungs with every breath. Dust clung to everything: clothes, rifles, skin. She had been assigned to a reconnaissance unit within the 75th Ranger Regiment, It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't meant to be. Their missions were the kind no one saw, the ones whispered about but rarely told. They went deep into hostile ground. They brought back intelligence no satellite could gather. And sometimes they eliminated targets that others couldn't reach. Her first mission came sooner than expected. Intelligence identified a Taliban commander coordinating attacks from a compound in a remote mountain valley. He moved often, slippery, careful. But word was he would be meeting local tribal leaders, a chance too rare to miss. Sarah was paired with Sergeant First Class Mike, a veteran of countless deployments. Hard eyes, knuckles, a man who measured others by action, not words. He'd been skeptical at first. Another new graduate, a woman no less. But Sarah's calm presence, her readiness, the way she handled her rifle with reverence instead of bravado, it began to wear down his doubts. Planning consumed 3 days. Satellite imagery, wind reports, routes through unforgiving terrain. They memorized everything until the valley existed in their minds as clearly as their own hands. The insertion would be brutal, a 15-mile approach on foot, through mountains that punished every step, avoiding enemy patrols and wary civilians who might report them. The night of insertion, the helicopter dropped them into black silence. The rotors vanished into the sky, leaving them with nothing but darkness and weight on their backs. The next 2 days tested Sarah in ways training never could. The air thinned as they climbed, every breath a burn. The rocks shifted treacherously beneath boots. They moved slow, careful, rifles balanced like lifelines. Her legs ached, her shoulders screamed, but she didn't complain. By the second evening, they reached overlooking the compound. Found the position tucked beneath jagged stone, nearly invisible from below. It was perfect. Range to target, 793 yards. Sarah settled into the position, scope aligned. The compound lay spread beneath them, vehicles moving, guards packing, smoke curling from fires. Life below continued, unaware of the crosshairs watching from the ridge. For 12 hours they watched, waiting, observing, recording every pattern, every routine. Her stomach growled, her body stiffened, but she didn't move. Patience wasn't a test anymore. It was survival. Late the next afternoon, whispered, "Target, 3 o'clock, convoy arriving." Sarah adjusted her scope. Dust rose as 3 vehicles pulled in. A tall man stepped out, the commander. She checked the face against intel photos. It was him. He moved with the easy authority of someone who knew men followed his orders without question. The commander walked to a group of men, gesturing, speaking, his hands slicing the air. Local tribal leaders stood nearby, but among them, Sarah's chest tightened, was a boy, maybe 12, maybe 13, thin, wary, eyes darting. Her finger hovered over the trigger. She could end it now, but the boy stood close, too close. A twitch, a shift, a gust of wind, and it wouldn't just be the commander falling. She froze. The same hesitation that had once doomed her in training clawed at her again. Memories of his voice burned through her. Decisiveness saves lives. But what about this life? This boy who hadn't chosen this meeting, who didn't even understand the danger of standing where he stood. Minutes dragged, sweat slid down her cheek. His voice pressed through her headset, low, firm. "You have a shot, take it." She shook her head slightly. Not clean, not yet. Didn't argue, he just waited, trusting her. Then it came. The commander stepped away, leaning over a table, examining documents. The boy stayed behind, distracted, safe distance clear. Sarah steadied, breath slow, crosshairs centered. She didn't calculate for minutes, she didn't drown in numbers. She trusted what she knew, what she felt. She squeezed the trigger. The sound cracked across the valley. The commander dropped instantly. Chaos erupted below, guards shouting, running, scrambling, but the boy was untouched, alive. His voice came calm. "Good shot, clean, time to move." They packed quickly, shifting into retreat, every muscle alive with adrenaline. Behind them, the compound boiled with confusion, but on the ridge, Sarah felt something else rise in her chest. Not pride, Not relief, something quieter. A truth. This wasn't about proving herself anymore, not about being perfect. It was about carrying the weight of every decision, every life that hung in the balance. As they disappeared into the mountains, she realized something she hadn't said out loud yet. She was no longer the girl chasing a badge. She was a sniper. Why did silence follow her, even after the rifle's echo faded? Sarah lay awake in the small forward operating base, her cot thin, the desert wind whispering through cracks in the walls. Around her, other soldiers slept in uneasy stillness. But she couldn't. Not after the shot. Not after watching the commander collapse in the dust while a boy, barely a teenager, flinched and stared wide-eyed at a world unraveling in front of him. The shot had been clean, perfect, necessary, but Sarah couldn't stop replaying the boy's face. He wasn't her mission. He wasn't her target, yet his image lingered more than the man she had killed. Her father's words echoed again. Sometimes the best choice is the one you make fast and commit to completely. She had committed. She had made the right choice, but that didn't mean it stopped echoing in her chest. 2 days later, they were out again. The mission was reconnaissance-heavy. No confirmed target, only whispers of a weapons cache hidden in a cluster of villages along the valley. Sarah and moved with a small ranger team, 4 men in total. Dust rose around their boots as they climbed narrow paths, hugging shadows, avoiding contact. The mountains loomed unforgiving. Heat blistered by day, cold gnawed by night. Every step carried weight, gear pressing into shoulders, rifles dragging arms down. Sarah kept her eyes forward, scanning, her scope an extension of her senses. By the 3rd night, they set up on an overlook above a small village. Fires flickered below. Figures moved, men, women, children. Hard to tell who was who. Harder still to decide who might be enemy. Through her scope, Sarah studied faces. One man lingered near a storage shed, slipping in and out when no one watched. Another carried boxes from the back of a truck, always glancing over his shoulder. The signs were small, but Sarah's gut twisted. Something was hidden there. She whispered her observations too. He grunted approval. "We'll pass it up. Command will decide." The order came back quick. Confirm with visuals, then move. No engagement unless threatened. Hours passed. Sarah's eye ached against the scope. The shed's door creaked open once more. The same man emerged, arms burdened with crates. He shifted, and for a brief second the lid of one box tilted. Through her scope, Sarah saw the unmistakable shape of ammunition belts. Her heart thudded, evidence confirmed. She whispered calm, steady, radioed it in. Their mission was complete. But as they prepared to withdraw, movement cut through the dark. 2 armed men walked the below them patrol. If spotted, the whole village would know. Sarah's rifle followed them, her crosshairs steady on the lead man's chest. She could end it now. Clean, silent, but the rules were strict. No engagement unless necessary. His hand rested on her arm, steady, warning. She held her breath. The men paused, speaking quietly, then turned, vanishing down the path. Sarah let out her breath, slow, shaking. One trigger pull and she could have compromised everything. One trigger pull and she might have been right or disastrously wrong. That night, as they exfiltrated through the mountains, Sarah felt the truth settling in heavier than her pack. Sniping wasn't just about shooting. It was about not shooting. The restraint cost her more than the act itself. Back at base, the report was filed, the mission marked successful. But no one saw the storm inside her chest. Weeks bled together, mission after mission. Some ended with clean shots, high-value targets neutralized. Others ended in nothing but cold hours lying in dust, watching, waiting. Each time she pulled the trigger, the weight pressed heavier. Each time she didn't, it somehow pressed heavier still. Her bond with grew. He didn't waste words, but in silence there was trust. He watched her work. He let her breathe through decisions without rushing her. He never doubted when she said wait or when she whispered now. One evening, while they cleaned rifles in the dim light of a single bulb, broke the quiet. "You think too much after the shot," he said. Sarah glanced up, rag in hand. "Is that a problem?" He shrugged. "Problem? No. Means you've still got pieces of yourself left. Most lose that quick." She studied him, searching for the weight in his tone. He wasn't warning her. He was reminding her that the cost of holding onto her humanity was high but maybe necessary. Her phone calls home became shorter. She told her mother she was fine, told her father the missions were going well, left out the boy's face, left out the patrol, left out the silence that followed her everywhere. One mission cut deeper than the rest. They were tasked with overwatch for a ranger platoon raiding a suspected safe house. Sarah lay prone on a rooftop, her rifle pointed down a narrow street. Through her scope, she saw doors open, figures scatter, the assault team moving fast. Then a man with an AK appeared from a side alley, raising his weapon toward the Rangers. Sarah's finger tightened. But then she saw a flash of fabric behind him, a child darting out of a doorway, chasing a stray ball into the street. Her chest clenched. The child was directly in the line. The man lifted his rifle. Sarah had seconds. If she waited, soldiers would die. If she fired, the child might die. Her breath caught. She adjusted, subtle, shifting her aim not for the chest but higher, the shoulder. She fired. The bullet struck, spinning the man backward, weapon clattering to the ground. Not a kill. A wound. Enough to stop him, not enough to risk the child. The Rangers moved in, securing the alley. The child froze, then bolted back inside, alive. Sarah's chest heaved. She had made the impossible choice, not by the book, not by training, but by instinct. And it had worked. Later looked at her across the rooftop. He didn't say anything, just nodded once, slow, deep, a recognition. That night back at base, Sarah lay awake again. The silence was louder than gunfire. But for the first time, she wasn't ashamed of her hesitation. She wasn't afraid of her instinct. She understood now. The job wasn't just about being deadly. It was about being human in a place designed to strip humanity away. And in that realization, Sarah found something unexpected. Hope. Why did the valley feel like it was watching them? Sarah crouched low behind jagged rock, her rifle steady, her breathing sharp. The mountains stretched like a cage around her, the wind curling through narrow passes. Below, a small compound glowed with dim lanterns. Men moved in and out, armed, watchful. Somewhere inside, intelligence said, was their target, a courier carrying plans for an upcoming attack. It was supposed to be straightforward. Confirm, eliminate, but nothing in this place ever was. Beside her, adjusted his scope, his voice low. Movement. Second floor window, left side. Sarah followed his. Through the glass, a man sat at a table, papers spread before him. He leaned in, gesturing to another figure. The intel photo matched. It was their man. Range 742 yards. Conditions: erratic winds shifting left and right as the valley funneled currents. Not impossible, but difficult. Sarah steadied her scope. Her crosshairs rose and fell with her breath. This was the kind of shot she had trained years for, but her gut twisted. The second figure at the table, smaller, younger, a teenager, maybe 17. Her chest tightened. "Target clear?" asked. She didn't answer right away. The boy shifted, leaning into the papers. Too close, too fragile. "Not yet," she whispered. Minutes crawled, they waited. The boy didn't leave. Sarah's eye burned against the scope. She could take the shot and the bullet would pass through the courier, but the risk. And then the unexpected happened. Shouting, doors slammed below. Figures spilled into the courtyard, rifles raised. A patrol had spotted something. Cursed under his breath, "They're sweeping the ridge." Sarah's stomach dropped. If the patrol pushed higher, they'd be trapped. "Options," she whispered. "Scan fast. We move now, stay ahead of them." But Sarah's scope stayed locked on the window. The courier was gathering the papers, stuffing them into a bag. If he escaped now, the mission was lost. And those documents, plans for an attack, could cost dozens of American lives. She froze, the weight crushed her chest. If she shot, the boy might die. If she didn't, soldiers might. Her finger hovered. The patrol's voices grew louder, closer. Time ran out. She made her choice. She fired. The courier fell back in his chair, lifeless. The papers scattered like broken wings. The boy cried out, ducking but alive. Sarah's bullet had found the mark clean. Move, hissed. They tore from the ridge, sliding down loose rock, every muscle screaming with urgency. The patrol shouted behind them, flashlights cutting beams through the dark. Sarah's legs burned as she sprinted, the rifle heavy in her arms. They ran until their lungs threatened to burst, weaving through boulders, ducking into shadows. Finally, they collapsed behind a rocky outcrop, hearts hammering, ears straining for pursuit. Silent, the patrol passed, searching elsewhere. Sarah's chest heaved, her hands shook. The shot had been good. Perfect. But the image of the boy's face, eyes wide, mouth open in shock, branded itself into her mind. Back at base, the report was clean. Target eliminated. Mission success. No mention of the boy. But Sarah couldn't let it go. She sat in the dim barracks, her rifle across her knees, staring at the metal badge pinned to her chest. Its words haunted her. You came as a shooter. You're leaving as a sniper. But what was a sniper when every decision bled into a moral wound? Found her outside, sitting in the dirt, staring at the stars. He sat beside her, his silence a kind of permission. Finally, he said, "You did the right thing. You saved lives tonight." Sarah's voice was low, almost breaking. "I almost killed a kid." "You didn't." He looked at her steady. "You made the shot you had to, and the boy's alive. Don't punish yourself for what didn't happen." She nodded, but the knot in her chest didn't loosen. The missions kept coming, each one a blur of danger, patience, and choice. Some were clean, some weren't. Every face she saw through her scope stayed with her, some alive, some not. And then came the mission that nearly broke her. A convoy ambush. Intelligence suggested high-value insurgents would be traveling a remote road at dawn. Sarah and were positioned with another team, providing overwatch. The convoy arrived, 3 trucks, armed escorts. Sarah steadied her rifle, her crosshairs on the lead vehicle's driver, called ranges, wind, conditions. The Rangers waited below, ready to strike. Then a ripple of movement caught Sarah's eye. The trucks weren't just carrying fighters. They were carrying civilians, women, children, packed into the backs, their faces pale, eyes hollow, human shields. Her stomach twisted. The order came through comms. "Engage, stop the convoy." Her hands froze. Sarah's voice cut sharp. "We don't have time, take the shot." She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. If she fired, the attack would begin. Explosions, gunfire, chaos, and those civilians would die in the crossfire. If she didn't, the insurgents would escape. Her heart pounded. Sweat blurred her sight. The world narrowed to her crosshairs and the terrified eyes of a child clinging to the side of a truck. Sarah barked, "Now." But she couldn't. She lowered her rifle. Gunfire erupted anyway. Another sniper team fired. The convoy descended into chaos, bullets slicing, grenades exploding. Sarah's stomach lurched as screams rose from the trucks, civilians caught in the storm. By the time it was over, the convoy was destroyed, insurgents eliminated, but so were innocents. Sarah sat in the dust afterward, numb, her rifle heavy in her lap. She hadn't fired, but the guilt was worse, because she hadn't saved them, because her silence had done nothing. That night she broke. Alone in the dark, she wept not for herself, but for the people who carried the cost of every mission. She wondered if she had the strength to keep going. Found her again, sat beside her again. "You think you failed," he said quietly, "but sometimes there isn't a right choice. Sometimes there's only the least wrong one, and that's the one we live with. She turned to him, tears in her eyes. Then how do you keep going? He looked at her, his gaze heavy, worn. Because if we don't, someone worse will. The words sank deep, not comforting, not easy, but true. Sarah wiped her face, her hands trembling. She wasn't sure if she believed him, but she knew this, she couldn't stop. Not yet. Not while lives still balanced on her choices. And so, she loaded her rifle again. Because tomorrow there would be another mission, another choice, another silence to live with. Why did the night feel heavier than the day ever could? Sarah lay prone in the dust, her rifle trained down a narrow street of a crumbling Afghan town. The moon hung low, clouds drifting across it like veils. Shadows stretched long, swallowing alleys, concealing faces. Every corner whispered danger. Her team was pinned. It had started as reconnaissance, simple, cautious. But the intel had been bad. The town wasn't half-occupied by fighters. It was crawling with them. Within minutes, her squad of rangers found themselves cut off, surrounded, fire rattling from rooftops and alleys. Sarah and had taken the high ground in a half-collapsed building, providing overwatch. Their job was simple, keep the others alive until extraction. But simplicity meant nothing when every window seemed to hold a muzzle. Below, the same soldier Sarah had partnered with in sniper school's final evaluation, darted across the street with two others, diving behind a burned-out car. Bullets sparked off metal inches from their heads. Martinez, north window, second floor, barked. Sarah shifted, her scope catching the glint of a rifle barrel. She fired one shot clean. The hostile dropped. Another appeared seconds later. She fired again. Breath, trigger, recoil, repeat. But for every hostile she eliminated, two more seemed to rise. Through her scope, she spotted something worse. A figure on the roof across the square, setting up a heavy machine gun. If it mounted, her team below wouldn't last a minute. "MG on the roof," she hissed. "I see it," replied. "Take the shot." Sarah lined her crosshairs, exhaled, squeezed. The gunner fell, his body tumbling from the ledge. Relief surged through her, brief, fragile. Then came the sound that made her blood run cold. A scream. She whipped her scope toward it. Was down. His leg twisted, blood pooling fast beneath him. The other rangers dragged him behind cover, but his face was pale, lips tight with pain. "Man down," the radio crackled. "We need to move now." But there was no moving. The streets were alive with fighters. Any attempt to break out would end in slaughter. Sarah's chest tightened. Through her scope she saw them, dozens of hostiles converging, rifles raised, closing like a tide. And then's voice, "Martinez, we hold them off. No matter what, do you understand?" She froze. His tone wasn't strategy. It was finality. Her heart hammered. "What are you saying?" He didn't look at her, just adjusted his scope, calm as stone. "If extraction can't reach us in time, we make sure they don't take us alive." The words hit like a physical blow. "No," she whispered. His eyes cut to hers, steady. "This isn't about what we want. It's about what we can't let happen. We can't give them hostages. Not him, not us." Her chest heaved. She understood. If the enemy breached their position, if capture was imminent, she would be expected to do the unthinkable. Take out her own team. Prevent them from falling into enemy hands. Her hands shook against the rifle. She couldn't, she wouldn't. But's voice was quiet steel. "You trained for this. You knew it the moment you pinned that badge." Her scope trembled as she swung back to the street. Fighters moved closer, shadows weaving. Groaned below, pain strangling his breaths. Every second passed like an eternity. The radio crackled, "Extraction bird inbound. ETA 20 minutes. 20 minutes, they didn't have 10. Sarah's vision blurred with sweat, with fear. Her rifle felt heavier than ever. The moral weight pressed down like a mountain. Could she? If it came to that, if ordered it, could she take the shot no one ever wanted to take? She wiped her eyes with the back of her glove, forced her breath steady. She couldn't think about it. Couldn't drown in the what-ifs. Not now. Not when every second demanded action. Through her scope, another hostile leaned around a corner, aiming for the Rangers. She fired, dropped him, shifted. Another. Another. Each shot was a wall she built, brick by brick, trying to hold the tide back. But the tide rose faster. His voice cut through the chaos. "Martinez, if it comes to it." "Don't," she snapped, her voice sharp, desperate. "Don't say it." Their eyes met in the dim light, silence stretching between them. Didn't argue, didn't insist. Just nodded once, not in agreement but in understanding. Minutes dragged. The enemy pushed closer. Bullets shattered stone around them, dust filling the air. Sarah's shoulder ached from recoil, her ears rang, but she kept firing. She wouldn't stop. She refused to let it come to that. And then salvation. The roar of rotors, the thump of blades, extraction burred low and fast, guns blazing. Hellfire poured down on the street, scattering fighters, ripping the tide apart. Relief surged through Sarah like fire. Her body shook, but she held her rifle steady, covering every move as the Rangers below dragged toward the landing zone. "Go," barked. They scrambled from the building, racing through alleys, bullets chasing their heels. Sarah fired over her shoulder, dropping shadows, buying seconds. By the time they reached the bird, her lungs were fire, her legs numb. Hands grabbed, pulled, shoved her inside. The helicopter lifted, the ground falling away. Sarah collapsed against the metal floor, chest heaving, rifle across her lap. Groaned beside her, medics already working. Sat opposite, his face unreadable. For a long time, no one spoke. The roar of the rotors filled the silence. Finally leaned forward, his voice low enough only she could hear. "You were ready to fight it. I saw it in your eyes. That's good. Means you're still human." She stared at him, trembling. "I couldn't have done it, not to them, not ever." He nodded, slow. "Then don't think about it as killing them. Think about it as protecting them from worse. That's the burden." Her chest ached. She wanted to argue, to scream. But all she could do was look away, the words carving deeper than bullets ever could. That night she didn't sleep. She sat in silence, polishing her rifle, her reflection staring back at her in the scope's glass. She wasn't sure who she saw anymore. Why did her hands feel steady, even when her heart was? Sarah crouched in the shadow of a mud brick wall, her rifle balanced across her knees. The Afghan night pressed in around her, dry, cold, endless. Stars spilled across the sky like shards of glass. But her focus wasn't on the heavens. It was on the compound below, glowing faint with lantern light. This was it, her last mission of the rotation. Maybe her last mission here, period. Intelligence said a foreign facilitator, the kind who funneled money, weapons, training, was inside. Taking him out wouldn't end the war. It wouldn't even end the week. But it would save lives. Sarah had been given the shot, just the two of them. Quiet, unseen, ghosts in the dark. They had been watching for 6 hours, waiting, observing. Patience no longer felt like a test, it felt like a rhythm. Breath, pause, adjust, repeat. Finally, movement. Through her scope, Sarah saw him, tall, broad, wrapped in a shawl, speaking to armed guards. The intel photo matched. Target confirmed. Her breathing slowed, her crosshairs steadied. The shot was clean. But something stopped her finger. At the target's side stood a girl, not older than 14, holding a tray of tea, serving the men as they spoke. She wasn't part of this. She wasn't meant to be here, but she was. And she was close, too close. Sarah's chest tightened. The old storm surged again. Hesitation, fear, the unbearable weight of being one pull away from a mistake that would haunt her forever. But this time, she didn't drown in it. She breathed, she waited. Minutes stretched, guards shifted. The girl moved away, setting the tray down. The target stepped closer to the open courtyard, gesturing wide, careless in his confidence. The shot opened. Sarah squeezed. The man dropped instantly. Chaos erupted. Guards shouted, scattering. The girl screamed, dropping to her knees but alive, untouched. Sarah's chest rose and fell, her breath shaking, not with fear, with release. They exfiltrated in silence, slipping through shadows, vanishing into the hills before pursuit could organize. By dawn, they were back at base. The report was filed. Mission successful. But Sarah knew it wasn't just another success. It was the moment she had been walking toward since that first failure at sniper school. The moment where patience, precision, instinct, and restraint came together, not as contradictions, but as balance. That night she sat outside the barracks, the desert wind cold against her face. Joined her as always, silent at first. Finally he said, "That was a clean shot and the girl lived. That matters." Sarah looked at him, then back at the stars. Her voice was quiet but sure. "It's not about perfect shots, it's about carrying the weight after." Didn't argue. He just nodded, slow, as if he'd been waiting for her to understand that on her own. When Sarah returned home months later, the badge still pinned to her chest, her mother embraced her like she hadn't in years, clinging as if she might never let go. Her father stood back, his eyes shining, pride breaking through his marine-hard exterior. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. When their eyes met, Sarah saw everything, the lessons, the silence, the hope. In her small Texas town, people whispered her story. Some called her a hero. Some said she was crazy. Most didn't know what she had done or what it had cost. Sarah never corrected them. She didn't tell them about the nights she lay awake, replaying faces in her scope. She didn't tell them about the times she almost broke or the weight she carried still. Because dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.